Hello, Dr. Michael Jeffress here, and today I want to talk more about the importance of evaluating sources, evaluating information, fact-checking, making sure you are getting good information and learning how to apply critical thinking skills. And so what I'm going to do throughout this video presentation is just share my screen here and show you just a bunch of examples of what I'm talking about. So, for example, we all know there are sites online like The Onion, okay? And so this is a website, The Onion, that's meant to look like real legitimate news. You can see here, if you look at the top, I mean, it's got the typical format, the layout that looks like legitimate news, right? Planned Parenthood opens $8 billion abortion plex, right? And it's an article here, and it's got things on the sidebar and other links, and you know, this just looks like a legitimate news site. And if you didn't know any better, right, you might think this is legit news. Of course, The Onion is not America's finest news source. What The Onion is satire, right? It's a group of people who put together fake journalism as a form of sarcasm to make fun of, you know, politicians and the real news, right? And so when you look at a site like this, right, first you need to ask the basic question, who is The Onion, and do some research, right? Whatever the site is, try to figure out, okay, is this a real site or not? And what's its leaning? Is it liberal? Is it conservative? Is it middle of the road? Who's writing the paychecks? In this case, if you did that, you would find out immediately The Onion is satire, and it would end there. But if you don't do that, and let's say you are a pro-life person, right? Then an article like this would really appeal to confirmation bias. You would be like, oh my God, Planned Parenthood is the devil, right? And you know, the Republican Party and the pro-life movement often uses Planned Parenthood as the target of all of their vitriol and angry rhetoric to end abortion. And here, this story says Planned Parenthood opens $8 billion abortion plex. It's sort of like a mall, and this is supposed to be a picture. And look, there's a tote board even. 8,864,902 terminated. I mean, if you can't look at that and know that that can't be real, then, you know, I don't know how I can help you, right? That is obviously sarcasm, right? Says state-of-the-art facility which features an IMAX movie theater as well as multiple fetus incinerators. Really? Fetus incinerators? I mean, come on, nobody talks like that who supports abortion. Planned Parenthood announced Tuesday the grand opening of its long-planned $8 billion abortion plex, the sprawling abortion facility that will allow the organization to terminate unborn lives with an efficiency never before thought possible. I mean, Hitler would be jealous, right? And this is just ridiculous, right? And it's just, it would be funny if not so sad that someone would actually take this as something that's legitimate, which is what happened here. I'm going to show you, let me see if I can find it. I thought I had it launched. This one, no. All right, let me go back to my document here and get my link, because I accidentally closed that window. But what we have here is a case of a Republican congressman from Louisiana falling for this fake story, right? And so just make this bigger, and you can see right here, Congressman John Fleming. This is a screenshot of his Facebook from a few years back when this all happened. And he says, you know, more on Planned Parenthood, abortion by wholesale. And here is the link, You see the link right here to the fake story, right? And so he passed that on as legitimate information, right? It's just ridiculous, right? You got to fact check, right? Lest you look like a fool, like Congressman John Fleming did. But unfortunately, a lot of people, no doubt, got that message from John Fleming and believed it, right? And it's part of, you can't make them not believe that Planned Parenthood is getting billions of tax dollars to do abortions, even though it doesn't receive a penny of tax dollars to perform abortions. So that's one example when you're dealing with a source that's, you know, blatantly false and dealing with sarcasm, right? But sometimes you get sources that are considered legitimate sources of news, but what they pass along is not true or factual. More on that in a minute. So here's a video. You might remember a while back this viral video, and if you didn't, let me just play it for you here right now. This girl's twerking. Oh yeah, she's working it, isn't she? Oh, now we're gonna get with it. Oh, let's do some upside down twerking. Y'all remember the twerking phase about 5 years ago or so? Oh, Lord have mercy. Uh-oh. All right, so this video was called Twerking Girl on Fire. And actually, though, come to find out, this wasn't even a true, real enactment, real video, right? It was staged. Jimmy Kimmel, who's a late night TV personality, has a late night talk show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, actually staged this. They created the set in his studio, recorded it, and then put it onto YouTube to watch it go viral. And the thing is, I remember when this happened. And I remember seeing in my news feed, local news stations and in their social media feeds were passing this on saying, oh, be careful with this new phase of twerking. I mean, they thought, they didn't fact check it and they passed it on. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of news organizations just passed this on without any critical thinking skills. I think it was maybe a week later that Jimmy Kimmel went on his TV show and revealed the fact that he had duped everyone with this and that it wasn't real. And it was meant to be a lesson of how easily we fall for things and pass it on without thinking about it. So another thing, let's look at, all right, we'll take this one since it's come up. So the other thing that's important when you're dealing with sources is you need to make sure you understand the source before you try to talk about it, right? And a classic example of that is the famous Supreme Court case decision about the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. And so what I've got here open is a link that provides you with the full text of the judgment, the verdict, if you will, of the Supreme Court. And as you can see here, it's 193 pages, okay? So what happens when the Supreme Court makes a decision? How do we find out that? Well, we find out through the media what the decision is, but how does the media find out? Well, what happens is the judges, there are 9 of them, right? And when both sides of the argument have rested their cases, then the judges, you know, go into their chambers, they deliberate, and they vote, right? And for many years, the Supreme Court has been divided ideologically with 4 conservatives, 4 considered more progressives, and a swing vote, right? That balance is shifting now, and but that's the way it's been for a long time. And so often on highly controversial, politicized issues that are aligned with a Democrat or a Republican agenda, The Supreme Court tends to vote 4-4, with the swing vote deciding who wins 5-4. And this decision for Obamacare was no different. The final vote was 5-4. Now, how do they communicate their decision? Well, they do it through the majority opinion that's written, which is this document right here. And it's 193 pages, okay? And we know that it was penned by Chief Justice John Roberts. So there's a clue. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the majority opinion. He's one of the 5. What do you know about John Roberts? Well, he's a Republican. He is considered a conservative justice. He was appointed to the nation's highest court by George W. Bush. He's from Texas. So immediately, right, the assumption is John Roberts, Republican, appointed by George W. Bush, there's no way he would have voted to uphold Obamacare. We must, it must be that Obamacare has been struck down by the Supreme Court and it's unconstitutional. Now, if you're a conservative news agency like Fox News, you can't wait to report that news. So what you're going to do is you're going to get this 193-page document and you're going to kind of run through it as quickly as you can to try to find proof of your assumption, okay? And I don't know how it all happened, but at some point in this document, it's 193 pages long. Maybe let's say it's page, I have no clue. Let's say it's page 101 as you're scanning through it as quickly as you can, right? Because what's important is not that you get the facts right, but that you get it first, right? You heard it first on Fox News. You heard it. CNN was the first to tell you, right? That's what everybody wants to be, is first. Wish they had the same passion at being right, being accurate, being ethical, and being journalists with integrity. But let's say on page 101, you find that, okay, yeah, right here it says the justices were not persuaded by the government's argument that blah, blah, blah. Oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. The justices were not persuaded by the government. Let's go live, and let's report it. And so let's see how Fox News then broke the news of this decision. Here it is. Let me back it up. I want you to hear this from the very beginning. Wait, did you hear that? Wait, did you hear that? Listen again. Listen at the beginning. Oh boy. Oh boy. Who said that? Okay, that's perhaps the news director. It's somebody who's speaking into the anchor's ear, and the mic, that feed wasn't cut before they went live. And so you're hearing this person who can't contain his excitement at what they're about to report. And what they are about to report is their quick read and false, as it turns out to be, conclusion that the Supreme Court ruled Obamacare unconstitutional. It's like, oh boy, we get to do it. We get to tell them it's unconstitutional. Take that, Obama, and you liberal Democrats. So here it comes. Whew. Whew. What did the justices do? Hammered away at the White House and their attorneys. You see how they are trying to frame the news there? They're trying to make it seem, they're trying to interpret the news for the viewers as if the Supreme Court justices were hostile toward President Obama's attorneys, right? They hammered away at the White House attorneys' arguments, right? Which was not true, right? Why did they do that according to Fox News? Listen to this great logical fallacy that comes next. Oh, there it was. There it was. The queen of logical fallacies, the slippery slope. If you can legislate health care, where can the federal government be stopped? I mean, next thing, Obama will be coming into your rooms and your closets and stealing your guns. You see, logical fallacies. This is not reporting news. This is an attempt to deceive, to spread political, ideological propaganda. All right. And that's why I say I don't ever cite Fox News as a source for anything because they're simply not credible. They have sold their soul. They're not even trying to be fair and balanced. Okay. So, because see what happened is, again, hypothetically, we're saying they stopped on page 101 of this 193 page document, right? 193 pages. They drew an assumption, right, based on the fact that John Roberts, conservative Chief Justice, Republican, was one of the 5 who voted in favor of the decision. Had they kept reading before they reported, they would have maybe, I don't know, on a page, let's say on a page 148, they would have come to, however, what? However, ruh-roh, Raggy, he said, however. There was a however. And so what the majority opinion says is, yes, the justices were not persuaded by this particular line of arguments, but they did, because of reasons then expounded upon, uphold the Affordable Care Act as law, as constitutional. And so, of course, Fox News had to come back and, you know, imagine that awkward moment where they had to acknowledge, actually, Obama won. So, yeah, make sure you understand your source before you try to talk about it. That means you got to read it. You got to make sure that you're following the lines of reasoning and know who's speaking and to whom, right? So that you don't take things out of context. All right. That's certainly something that our current president does a lot. And it's dangerous, right? When you just make up information and you don't cite sources, right? You know, it's not just that you're being reckless, right? When you're in a position of authority over people, in a position to be able to persuade them, right? And you're using incorrect information, fake information that can be potentially harmful, deadly to people, such as the case with this coronavirus. I'm going to play this short video just as an example of what we're seeing right now in this coronavirus. All right, I want to stop it right there for a second. So what you see is, you know, Fox News given the president a platform to speak unfiltered, completely impromptu, off the cuff, and he's just making up crap. he's just spouting off stuff, trying to control the narrative, trying to make himself look good. And you have the director, the general, the director, right? Top medical doctor in the world, basically, when you're the medical doctor who's the head of the World Health Organization, telling people how dangerous it is, telling people statistically 3.4% of the people who've been treated for COVID-19 have died. And that's far, far worse. It's like 30 times worse than seasonal flu, which is less than 1%, right? Much less than 1% of people who've died. And yet President Trump, without any source, without any evidence, saying it's his quote unquote hunch, just dismisses the science, dismisses the data, dismisses the facts. Oh, based on a lot of conversations with a lot of people. A lot of people. Oh, yeah. Very rapid. Oh, don't worry about going to the doctor. Corona flu. Based on what? So again, I'm just going to stop it right there because this really gets my blood boiling, right? Where truth just doesn't matter. Facts don't matter, right? And we have to do better than this. We have to hold people accountable. We have to cite sources. We have to accept the science and the data and let it speak for itself. And when people are just saying a lot of people, well, maybe 100,000 or more even, or whatever, I mean, they're just making crap up. They have to cite their sources to have credibility. And of course, President Donald Trump has zero credibility. He has proven that time and time again with his lies. Okay. And yet this is a very common strategy by people who just want to promote their viewpoint, to tell you a lot of people, many people, right? So watch this. This video right here. So again, here, the issue is not citing sources, not giving a reference, just say, well, many people believe this, right? Some people say, okay, who? Name names. Give me numbers and addresses, right? Give me emails, give me websites, give me transcripts and video footage or whatever, cite and tell me about the credentials of these people. And are they an expert? Do they have an informed opinion, right? To even be making these comments, okay? If you can't verify the source, then don't cite it, okay? So now on citing sources, it's important to know, right, your source, the source of what you're talking about, and to make sure that you're using information in the appropriate way and not taking it out of context, not twisting it. You know, there have been a number of times when I've been giving a speech, right? I give a speech or I give a lecture somewhere, I speak at a conference, and of course in my speech or my lecture, I quote people, I quote studies, quote authors of different studies and books and journal articles and things. And a number of times, right, the author of the source I have cited was sitting in the audience and has come up to me and said, so you read my article, well, tell me what you really think about it. And can you imagine, like, if I had just proof texted this and found it and didn't know really anything about that source, and I'm confronted right there by the author of the source, I mean, that person could destroy me professionally, right? I could lose all my credibility if the author of the source I cited were to say, hey, no, that's not what I said, or that's not what I meant when I said that. You're totally taking it out of context. You never want to be guilty of that and in that position, right? Well, I want to show you this video, and this goes back a few years, and there's certainly more relevant, more recent examples of this. It happens, I mean, daily. No doubt on television with interviews and things like that. But this is a classic example I like to use. And this is going back to 2012, and it was the ahead of the Democrat National Convention. Okay, and so you have this panel of people that you see in the center of the screen who are on a CNN news program, and they're political pundits and journalists. And the person to the far left of the screen in the green is the CNN news anchor. And the two people I want to focus on are the people to the right at the end. So on the very end is Ryan Lizza, who's a freelance journalist and has published a lot of articles and in particular in the New Yorker magazine. And then to his right is Amy Kremer, Kremer, I'm not sure how she pronounced her last name. At the time, she was the national spokesperson for the Tea Party movement. Now, the Tea Party movement is a extremely conservative sect, if you will, within the Republican Party. And they rose, to power, in the Bush years and post-Bush years, early 2012, kind of in response to Obama getting elected, and they're just very hyper conservative and fundamentalist and want to take America back and make America great again kind of crowds, the Tea Party movement. And she's the national spokesperson for this organization, all right? And they're having a conversation. And so I'm going to just start the video. Basically what's happening is the lady in the middle, or Kremer, the spokesperson for the Tea Party, has been saying some things that's got everybody riled up. She's been being very critical of President Obama and his policies, and is basically what she has just said is, to give you the context of where we're starting the video, she's made the statement that she doesn't believe that President Obama loves America like past presidents and the Republicans do. Doesn't love America, right? So they're trying to make sense of that. So let's pick it up here. Well, if we can. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, obviously there's something going on here. I'm going to reload this page and see if it clears itself out. All right. Let me see where we are. All right. Let me see. Probably right here. Yeah, here we are. Do you see how she's looking at him? I mean, I don't want to read too much into this, but I just see, I'm sorry, I have to call things the way I see it, but in her nonverbals and the way she looks down at the gentleman to her right, I think she's racist. I think she's prejudiced. I think she's sitting here like, you ignorant black man, why are you even sitting here? Maybe I'm wrong for that, but that's just, you know, that's what her nonverbals and her face gestures are communicating to me in her interaction. And you're going to see it continue here. Now notice the guy seated to her left, Ryan Lizza, the journalist, you can tell by his facial expression, like he's trying to figure out what the heck is this woman talking about? I mean, she's not even making sense here. And he's genuinely trying to understand her argument so he can speak to it. All right, her position. I don't know, Syria, Iran, I mean, one of those Middle Eastern places. I mean, she's just presenting herself as somebody who doesn't know what she's talking about. Listen to that mythos, the American way. See? Yeah, that's right. That's not America. That's not the American way. Okay. Pick right up. This website has them and has these videos in like 1 minute increments. Maybe this is the American way. All right, so look, our journalist friend has been thinking about this. He's been running it through his mind like, what is she talking about? Oh, okay, I got it. It's this leading from behind talking point that the Republicans currently have. So if you were to go back to this time period and look at the news transcripts, the Republicans who are going on to these news shows and giving interviews, their talking point right now is needing somebody who will really be a leader. You know, we need to elect someone who is going to be a real leader, not re-elect President Obama, but re-elect a Republican who will be a leader and not lead from behind. All right, so that's their talking point. He's just pinpointed it, and she's confirmed. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. She's thinking, oh my God, I'm screwed. All right. So he just said, you're talking about this idea of leading from behind, right? Yes, that's it. Exactly. Amen, brother. Well, I'm the journalist who first reported that, who brought that language into the press. And let me tell you what I meant by it. So we're about to have an epic smackdown here. All right, so I'm going to back it up just a little bit so you can, now that you have the full context, and let it play through. So here we go. See where we are. Let's go right here. Boom. The quote, my quote, right? Or the quote that was told to me from someone in President Obama's cabinet that then I reported in my journalism piece in the New Yorker lead from behind, it actually means the exact opposite of how you're using it. So the Republicans are using it as a pejorative, as a negative, lead from behind. That's not the American way. And Ryan Lizza wrote about President Obama leading from behind as a positive strategy, as an effective strategy, as a refreshing change and breath of fresh air after the Bush years, where we just went in heavy-handed with the, all of our guns blazing and invading Iraq and, going to war in Iraq and Afghanistan and not caring what other nations might think or the implications and ramifications of that. And so what's happening here is now fast forward a few years later, and we've got another dictator, sort of like Saddam Hussein in Iraq. You had Gaddafi in Libya, Northern Africa, and everybody agrees he's a bad apple and he needs to go. And the Republican war hawks are wanting America to, invade and send airstrikes and to take Gaddafi out, just like they took Saddam Hussein out. And Obama is like, no, we're not going to do it that way. Why should America always have to be the world's police? Why should America have to be the one who always has to go out and wield the big stick and then have the foreign, fallout of that in the form of like a big black eye? You see, why can't other nations take some responsibility and do this time? And so basically what President Obama did was he built a coalition among other nations through the United Nations and basically planted the seeds and the ideas, right, and pushed from behind, pushed them to do what needed to be done. And Gaddafi was toppled by his own people as a result, right? There was a revolution. And so America comes out without this big black eye, like we've had with foreign policy from, the Bush years. And so what Lizza says is Obama, man, yeah, he was leading. He was a great leader. It's just he was leading from behind instead of pulling people and dragging people in the direction to go. He was pushing and inspiring and motivating from behind. And so now he's just given this epic smackdown on TV of this person who's the spokesperson for the Tea Party movement to say, basically, politely, indirectly, woman, you're a moron. You're an idiot. You don't understand what you're talking about. And that's not a position any of us wants to be in. So check your sources, know your sources, cross-reference, double check, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now I want to end with looking at some examples of numbers. Okay. So it's important when you're looking at statistics that you learn how to read and interpret them. Okay. So here's an example. This was put up by MediaMatters.org, which is a watchdog for journalism and journalistic practices. And it's a screenshot, okay, from Fox News. And Fox News put up this screenshot, this graphic, right? And look at the heading, federal welfare received in the US. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. We're looking at the trend, the increase in the amount of welfare that's being doled out in the US. And if you notice, the x-axis, okay, the horizontal axis, we're starting with the first quarter of 2009, going to the second quarter of 2011. So this aired around the early part of, or mid 2011 or 2012, around that time period, about the time that the 2012 election was going on and President Obama was up for re-election. And of course, Fox News is working to try to undermine the president, to try to encourage people to turn against the president and vote for the Republican, who I believe was Mitt Romney at that time. running for president. So why do we start at 2009, the first quarter? Well, that's the first quarter under President Obama's presidency. Okay, he was elected in November 2008, so he would have taken office in January of 2009. And you look to the left and you've got the amounts of money in welfare up to $108 million, okay? And this is quarterly, the amount of money quarterly sent out through welfare. Now, when you look at this graphic, what kind of effect does it have visually, right? When we talk about visual rhetoric, what is the impact of seeing this visual? When you look at the first red bar at Q1 2009 and the last red bar 2011 Q2, how do you compare? I mean, it's a steady increase, right? It's a steep slope. It looks like the amount of federal welfare is skyrocketing, right? You want me to tell you can I just speak plainly to you? You know what Fox News is saying here? We told you so. You put a black man in the White House, you put a black man in office, and look at all the food stamps now. Look at all the welfare. Okay, that's horribly offensive and racist, right, to think that, but that's exactly what they're trying to say indirectly to their audience. And who is the main audience of Fox News? It's 40 to 60-year-old white men. That's the dominant group, dominant demographic of their viewing audience. And so they're definitely appealing, trying to appeal to the worst in that demographic of people, prejudice toward black people. Now, how did they achieve this? Is it the case that the amount of welfare under Obama has skyrocketed like this? Absolutely not. You see, this graph, right, the floor is not at zero. This is an example of what we call truncating the y-axis. The y-axis is the vertical axis, right? You got a y-axis and an x-axis, right? And then the bars going up. Notice we don't start at zero. Where are we starting? We're starting at 94 million. So see, if we really presented this ethically, we would start at zero. And then what you would see are these long bars, right? And instead of having an incline that looks like this, your incline would only look about like maybe this. In other words, the first quarter of 2009 is at what, about 97 million? And the second quarter of 2011 is 107 million. That's 10 million, and 10 million out of 107 million is less than 10%. Less than a 10% increase over 2 years is what you have here. But when you just look at this chart, it looks like it's increased by, gosh, what, 3 or 4 times. Okay, that's so unethical, so unethical. Yeah, the numbers are here, and if people would look at it long enough and let all of that really sink in and do the math, they could figure it out. But people don't do that, and Fox News isn't going to leave this graph up on the screen long enough for you to do that. They're going to flash it on the screen. You're going to see that red bar, and you're going to see the line going like this, and that's what's burned in your image, in the image of your mind. It's egregious. It's deceptive. It's lying with statistics is what it is. Another example of that is this one right here. Okay, it's the same situation of truncating the y-axis. Okay. So one of the things that President Bush did near the end of his second term as president is he initiated a payroll tax cut, reduced the amount of federal payroll taxes that were taken out of people's paycheck as a relief, as a form of relief. It was time, that was a limited measure, right? In other words, it was to be done for a set amount of time. And of course, you know, being shrewd politically, it was made to expire after his presidency was over. So he didn't have to deal with the fallout of when things go back to normal and people see that more taxes are taken out of their checks once again. So now President Obama has been elected, and he's inherited a great economic recession from Bush and writing wars with checks that couldn't be cashed. And President Obama is not going to approve extending these tax cuts. Okay? In other words, the tax cut that was temporary, that Bush initiated, is going to reach its deadline, its end. Okay? And things are going to go back to the way they were before. Now, the way the news is spinning it is President Obama is about to raise your taxes. President Obama is not about to do any such thing. Okay? The tax cut that Bush initiated is about to end. Okay? And things are just going to go back to the way they were before that temporary measure was put in place. So what Fox News is trying to do, again, leading up to an election period where they're trying to shape people's opinion against Obama, they're wanting to say, look what's about to happen. If President Obama lets these Bush tax cuts expire, here's what's going to happen to your taxes. So the bar on the left represents your taxes now. And then if President Obama does not extend it, the bar on the right represents what it's going to be. Now, how much bigger does the bar on the right look compared to the bar on the left? It looks at least 4 or 5 times bigger, doesn't it? But when you look at the fine print, right, and because the floor, right, the x-axis is not 0, it's 34. So we start at 34, and we're going to go up to 35 for now. That's 1. And we're going to go up to 39.6, right? Which is actually 4.6%. Only 4.6%. Now the bar looks like it's a full 400% bigger. It's actually only 4.6%. Okay, so these are just some examples of the way gatekeepers of information, news agencies, sources of information will present the information in a way to try to deceive you. And that's why it's so important that you have good critical thinking skills, all right, so that you can cut through all the BS, okay, and find the facts. And as the famous saying from, who was it, Dragnet, years and years ago, like maybe the 50s or the 60s, this character who was a detective, and he would say, just the facts. And that's what we want to know. And that's what we want to share. So hope this was helpful.